I just helped Pastor Anthony lose 52 pounds without tracking calories. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how we did this and then how you can lose that weight yourself without being obsessed with calories. Let me share my screen and we're going to dive in. So, this is Pastor Anthony. You can see his before over here. That's before we worked together. This is after now. And the problem that we were facing, we'd worked together for about 7 months before we ever got to this midpoint here. And what happened with Anthony is he ran out of time to track calories. Anthony is a youth pastor. What that means is that in the summer, he's got lots of camps, he's got travels, he's got bus trips, he's got sports events for his teens. And so Anthony ran out of time. And up until this point, he'd been tracking calories pretty consistently. He stayed on top of everything and he didn't really, he didn't fall off. He was very, very committed. He didn't miss workouts or anything like that. But once summer hit, man, life just tackled him and it was over for him in terms of calories. So he started tracking that. Or I'm sorry, he stopped tracking his calories because he just ran out of time. And then that meant that this did not work with real life. So on top of not having time, he also didn't have consistency. So he was, like I said, he was on the road a lot. He was in camps. You never know what those cooks are putting in the food. And so this calorie counting just did not apply to real life. And my guess is for a lot of pastors, this is pretty familiar, right? Like you go to a church potluck and you have no idea to what on earth to put in your app, or anything like that. And so for him, this just wasn't a reality. It wasn't going to work for him. He needed something that would be different, and that's what we built. Let me walk you through that. Before I do, if you want a copy of this Google Doc and to learn more about getting in shape as a pastor, I'm going to be sharing this in my free community. It's called the Fit Pastor Blueprint. All you have to do is click the link in the description to join. So let's talk about the steps that Anthony took. So he had some low hanging fruit. There were a few very simple things that he implemented that helped Anthony to continue losing weight. At this point, he'd lost about 30 pounds. I'll show you the graph in a moment. But he lost about 30 pounds, then stalled out for several months. But he continued this without tracking calories. He continued and lost the last 22 pounds without any of that. And that started with low hanging fruit. There were a few swaps. For instance, he loves Bojangles. It's his favorite restaurant, but that's fried. It's got a lot of junk in it. It's got the sauce, all the stuff. But he also loves he also loves Chick-fil-A grilled nuggets. And so for him, swapping Bojangles for the grilled nuggets was a very easy, simple swap. Swapping chips for fruit, or maybe for you, swapping a Coke for a Diet Coke or a Coke Zero. These are easy replacements, and it really makes this weight loss much simpler and less complex than it has to be. You don't have to track calories to know that a Coke Zero is going to be better for you in terms of weight loss than a normal Coke, or that grilled nuggets are going to be better than Bojangles fried. So just that's what he did, and that really made it easy for him. So then the second thing is we prioritize protein intake only. Now, a lot of people, they make up this story about how you have to be tracking all of your macros, all of your fats, all of your carbs, all of your proteins, and you get super in depth on all of this. And that leads to overwhelm. And on top of that, if you're not even tracking calories, how are you supposed to track your macros? That doesn't work either. He didn't have time for either. He did not have the resources for either, considering that he couldn't be in control of his diet for most of this. And so he just prioritized protein intake, meaning he tried to eat protein first in the meal. Like literally, he prioritized. So once he got his protein in for the day, then he knew he was free to eat whatever he wanted afterwards. And he made sure not to indulge himself, not to go too far with it. But all he did was move the amount of protein he eats earlier into the day, literally making it prior. And that made his journey much easier. Then he finally built a repeatable, safe food framework that fits into his lifestyle. So, talked about swapping to grilled nuggets for Chick-fil-A, things like that. Swapping foods that you have access to is a huge unlock for a lot of guys. So, what Anthony did is he stopped giving himself access to foods that were going to make this hard, and he started only giving himself access to foods that would make this easy. So this safe food framework kind of became what Anthony needed, and that enabled him to continue that fat loss from 30 pounds all the way down to the remainder. So the outcome is his weight stayed flat all summer instead of rebounding. Now, you might see that as not good news. Like if you're trying to lose weight and your weight stays the same, then that seems like you've lost. And don't get me wrong, there were days where he felt defeated or felt like giving up. There were days that I had to talk him off the ledge from that. But he did not gain weight. He did not add anything. And for months, he could have added weight. He could have added fat. And he could have, on all of these trips, all of these camps, all of these journeys where he was out of control, he could have turned out at the end of the summer having to go back just to baseline. But that's not what he did. He stayed flat the entire time because he was consistent using these steps. Then he lost his final 20 pounds without tracking calories. Now, I even tried to get him to track so that I could see what was going on. And he said, "No, I haven't been tracking. I don't really worry about it anymore. I just kind of know where I am. And I know that if I'm eating too much, I'm going to be fat the next day. So I'm not going to do it." And it worked for him, meaning that he'd built in this system that worked for him. Now, obviously, for you, you may need to tweak your own system. You might not have Bojangles and Chick fil A, but you do have something that you can take that low hanging fruit. You can put protein first, and you can build a safe food framework that you live inside to make your life easier. And if you're like him, then you'll lose your final 20 pounds without tracking calories. I want to show you his progress. So let me open this up. I'll see if I can share the screen to you. Here we go. This is his weight when we started. So at the very beginning, he was 211 pounds, and you can see this little dry spot right here where he didn't really lose or gain anything, and he went down to 181. So 211 to 181, he lost his first 30 pounds. He stayed pretty consistent, lost a few there throughout the summer from March to August. And then we got serious again, and you can see it really dropped down pretty fast. And his all time low was in December, right before he left for Christmas break, and he got down to 160. So he lost 52 pounds from the start to 11 all the way down to 160. What that means for you and me is that, let me swap this back. What that means for you and me is that there's a few action steps, a few takeaways um, that we can walk away with. So let me show you this. His weight stayed flat. By the way, I don't know if you noticed that, but I only have 3 spots open to work with me right now, one-on-one, to lose the 20 to 30 pounds. So if you're curious, then there's a link to apply in the description. It is first come, first serve. I have a few calls already lined up this week, so make sure that you hop in there. So finally, the lessons learned, some things that you can take away. Number one, tracking calories is a tool, not a lifelong requirement. Anybody who tries to say that the only way to ever make any progress is to track calories is lying to you or trying to sell you something that's not helpful. You do not have to track. In fact, I would argue that you should not have to track after some time. I personally have not tracked calories in a few months, and I've been able to maintain my weight, get stronger, and stay relatively lean. So it's a tool. There's a time for it, and we're going to get to this at the bottom. But there's a time for using this tool, but there's a time to put that tool down. Just like you wouldn't whack your hammer, or you wouldn't use a hammer for a screw. You need to use the right tool at the right time. Same thing here. Number two, awareness and consistency beats perfection. So if I'm aware of what I'm eating, I don't have to be perfect, but at least I know what I'm eating. If I'm aware of the fact that I'm getting ice cream later on, then I can plan for that in advance. And if I'm aware that I had ice cream 2 times this week, I probably should not go a third time. Consistency means that I'm going to keep that awareness up. So if I'm consistently aware, that's better than perfection, because perfection is going to make me feel crushed. It's going to build a little jailhouse for me to live in, and you can never leave that jail cell. But awareness and consistency is more like a home that you can be in, you can live in for a time, you can walk out, and you can enjoy your life outside of it. Third thing, simple swaps are better than complex plans. If I have a simple swap, I'm going to choose that every day over having to make sure that I have this many grams of whatever and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't, you can do that, but my guess is you're not a bodybuilder and you're not trying to step on a stage anytime soon. You're just a pastor who loves your church, you love your family, and you want to stick around for them for a long time. So you don't need a complex plan. You don't need to track every single macro and micronutrient that you eat. You don't need all of that. You just need something that's simple. Go swap your Bojangles for Chick-fil-A grilled nuggets. Very simple. And then you need to build systems that survive busy seasons, not just ideal ones. I've been on calls with guys and they're like, all right, now it's really not a good time to get serious about this. And my answer is yes, it is. That's exactly why it's a good time. Because if you can prove to yourself that right now in this busy season, in this difficult time, that you can do it now, how much better is it going to be whenever it's easy and when it's simple and when there's nothing else going on in life and you're able to focus? So you want a system that can survive that busy season so that your ideal seasons can really thrive beyond that. And finally, there's a time to sprint and a time to slow down. And you saw in his graph, it was very high at first and then it dropped pretty fast. That was a time to sprint. He was crushing it, but there was a real life season in the middle there where his family commitments, some things came up with that, where his ministry commitments, some things came up with that. And that just meant that he needed to slow down for a little bit. So we did. We pivoted, we adjusted, changed his workouts a little bit, and then we changed his diet around a little bit. And we stopped focusing so much on perfection and tracking and getting everything right. And we started instead focusing on something that's sustainable. Then, when it was time to sprint again, we did. Because he built these habits in this difficult season, maybe I should put this busy seasons teach good habits, or hard times, strong men. Both the same season. For him, that tough summer season built some habits in him that made it impossible for him to fail later. And those hard times that he was going through built a strong man in his case. Hopefully, it can do the same thing in your case. And if this is helpful to you, again, link in the community in the bio or in the description down below. You can hop in. It is free, and I hope to see you there. Hope this helped. Have a great